Hello guys, Kanvaris here. I'm going to be bringing you a Meditation Guardian gameplay in a solo queue match that I just had. So I'm going to be running a Greatsword Hammer build, just for the record. Showing an overview of the professions involved, you're going to see that their team is a lot glassier than ours, as they have a Thief, a Shatter Mesmer, a Meditation Guardian, a Scepter Focus Elite, and then a Bunker Guardian. So my team definitely out-tanks them, which gives us an advantage in this game, just in terms of comp. So there's one more little overview for those of you who didn't see it. So a quick overview of my traits. I'm going to just kind of show you what those are, and then I'll kind of tell you why I took it for this build. So the first one's Fiery Wrath, because it gets more damage into my build. I get a reduced recharge on meditations, more precision based on my toughness, and I actually have quite a bit of that in this build, so that's a pretty big plus. I get Might on critical, all my weapon skills are reduced recharge, and I have larger symbols for a more widespread damage area. I do run Traveler runes, so I have a little extra mobility in my build, and it kind of gives me a really nice stat spread. If you see, I'm not heavily focused on being a tank or heavily focused on being damage, but I do have quite a bit of damage, and a pretty good amount of tankiness, enough to let me skirmish pretty well. So this would be a nice 1v1 build if you wanted to just take a solo queue build to kind of fit any role on your team. So we do get swiftness from a support guardian, which is going to be a very strong start for us. It means we're going to be able to get to the points quicker than the other team. I leap ahead to start getting cap progress before they can. Their guardian ends up running on the point, so I do put down a symbol to break his Aegis buff, and then I start trying to burst him with my greatsword. I do miss my knockback on my hammer, and then both of their guardians actually jump on me, so I dodge back and put a ring down to keep them crowd controlled and get a little bit of zone control for my team, so we can start focusing our burst. The guardian I jumped on is their meditation guardian, and so as you can see, he's really glassy and I'm putting a lot of damage into him, but the support guardian knocks me back with his shield, and one of our guys goes down because his heal got interrupted. He ports away, and so we decide to start cleaving around on the body to make sure they can't get a finish on him and they can't res the guy that we downed. So they're Thief Shadow Refuges, and we start cleaving that area, and we're able to cleave them down before the Thief can get a res on them. And then we just have to finish off their very glassy Elementalist and take the point for ourselves. Here I make a bit of a mistake. I didn't realize our Guardian was going to hold mid, and so I kind of stay there when I didn't need to. So after that I decide to go up towards home, but I see their Thief is capping a ferocity buff, so I decide to open on him because I know I can 1v1 him and I know I can get some really strong damage into him. I open up with a little bit of a greatsword burst, but he shadow steps away, so I port back to him and start bursting him down with my greatsword, and at this point he's just going to completely run away and his elementalist buddy is going to engage on me, so I'm left to 1v1 this elementalist. Now normally I'm not very confident in terms of fighting Scepter Focus Elementalists 1v1. They are very damaging and it's kind of difficult for me to deal with at times, but I did engage because I saw on my minimap my other Guardian buddy was coming in to help me, so I let him come down and we keep the cap for ourselves, and then I decide to move up and start putting pressure on their far point, but I see their Shatter Mesmer is going down towards our midpoint, and so I decide to jump on him to make sure he can't get a decap on that, and to see if we can burn him down really quick, because if you can keep a Shatter Mesmer or a Thief dead on the other team, you're basically locking them out of all their damage. So the more times you can keep the Mesmer or Thief locked down on the other team and just completely shut out of the match, you're going to be giving your team an advantage in damage output and overall numbers, because they're not going to have as many people on the field. Now here their Guardian engages me and then their Thief jumps on me, and realizing I can't tank this kind of damage, I decide to start moving down towards the midpoint. They're putting a lot of damage pressure into me, so I decide to pop my virtues and then pop my invulnerability, and then jump onto my midpoint so I can get support from my elementalist. And then I decide to turn on to their Thief and start bursting him, and he melts really quick because he's very glassy as a dagger pistol thief. So I take a res knockback from the Guardian's trait, and then start to try to crowd control the guard so we can get a stomp on the Thief. He comes back and knocks me again with his shield, so I decide to start cleaving so our Elementalist can finish him off before the Guardian gets a res. At this point, we end up dealing enough damage to him that he has to pull back, and he fully retreats, and we get to keep the cap for ourselves. And as the Elementalist stays to keep the cap, I push up towards the Guardian. Now what our Elementalist sees is that the stillness buff has come up, and I decide to keep pressure on their Guardian so that he doesn't come back and try to get the point. So when our Elementalist moves up to cap stillness, I come to make sure nobody's going for the decap on our midpoint, and then I decide to push up towards our home point because I see it's getting decapped and most of the people there are down. But then I realize they're going to cap stillness if I do that, so I decide to push towards the stillness buff and put a lot of AoE damage down with my greatsword to try to burst out their thief. He ends up shadow refuging and running away, so I decide it's just better for me to jump on the Guardian so we can finish him off. Our thief comes in and actually takes him out, so we're going to get a clean stomp there. And our Elementalist starts to cap it, but their thief jumps back on us with his short bow. So we decide to start bursting him out. We get him immobilized, but then he breaks it with his heel and runs away. So I decide that's good enough, and I let us get the cap, and then I decide to move back over towards the midpoint because it's contested and actually decapped. And to stop their Mesmer from getting the cap, I decide to jump onto him and start putting pressure so he doesn't actually get any sort of cap progress. So from here, my Elementalist is going to join the fight, followed very quickly by my Guardian, and we're going to put a lot of damage into this Mesmer. So again, it's keeping focused damage pressure on the Glacier characters of the enemy to make sure that they can't get an advantage on burst. If you can burst out their characters and force them to play defensively, you're going to have a numbers advantage and you're going to have a tactical advantage because you'll be able to apply pressure to the enemy team and they'll be forced to react rather than go on the offensive. So here we just cleave them out and get some more points for our team. I decided to check the score really quick because sometimes it'll let you know who's doing a really good job on the enemy team with ganking and killing off players. Now it's not always accurate because it's the scoreboard and they give you points for really weird things. So realizing that I got enough people going to my home point, I decided to push their far point to see if I can take it in a 1v1. I saw their Mesmer was there and I was hoping that he wouldn't notice me going around the back way, but he ends up noticing me and he starts putting pressure on me with his greatsword. So their Guardian rotates off the home point and I know I can 1v1 this Mesmer, so I decide to jump on him again and see if I can put some burst damage into him in order to take the point. I block some of his bursts. He goes stealth, and so I switch to my hammer to start putting crowd control, but he mows me and I'm forced to retreat off the point and let him take the cap. In that situation, you never want to sit there on a point with a Mesmer who's just mowed you because you're going to die. There's nothing you're going to do about it, and it's pretty worthless for your team if you're just going to sit there and die. So I decided to jump on their Guardian, who is waiting for the 830 buffs to come up. For those of you who don't know, that's the Stillness and Tranquility buff. They always come up at 830 again. So the Thief and I get a very quick gank on their Guardian to make sure he can't cap anything, but their Mesmer engages on us, so we're forced to start putting some burst damage into him. At this point, he's going to completely run away, and the Thief is going to be able to get a complete cap on the Stillness buff. You can see he's going up towards our home point, but I decided to just stay and make sure nobody can take that. At this point, the rest of my team is going to go down and start trying to delay their cap on Tranquility just long enough so that we can win the game. And again, knowing I can 1v1 this Mesmer, I decide to jump on top of him and start fighting him for control of our home point. I'm using my greatsword to put a lot of AoE burst damage down to make sure that he can't heal or regenerate any of his health. Now, if you saw, I used Renewed Focus to avoid his Daze Puddle, and avoiding that is definitely a very good choice for you, as that'll give him buffs, and generally it'll put things like poison on you, which as a Guardian you really don't want to deal with, because that'll take out, again, 33% of your healing. That's a big chunk of your sustain that goes away. And because you deal so much damage, you really don't have to focus a ton of burst on a Glacier character like a Shatter Mesmer. A lot of the times you can just auto-attack because you know they're going to dodge your bigger hits, so if you can just put a lot of damage in with some of your AoEs and your auto-attacks, you'll easily be able to take them down like I did there. So seeing that mid is getting decapped again, I decided to jump down on that and get the full cap on that. so that our team can win. If you see, we're very far ahead, and I don't want to lose that lead by them getting a full cap on the map while we're stuck at Tranquility. I do see their Mesmer going for our home point, and I realize he's going to try to get a decap there, but I decided to just full cap mid and then go for their far point, because I know if I can get rid of their point generator, then it's guaranteed that we'll win, and I just have to find a point to hold. So at this point, there's like 20 seconds left in terms of point generation, and I decide I'm just going to take their far point and bunker that point for the rest of the match to make sure we can get a guaranteed win. So I decided to start full capping that. Their Mesmer goes for a decap on mid and home like I suspected he would, which is why I went to the far point, because I didn't want to waste time 1v1ing. Then their Guardian ports in and gives a giant teleportation knockback with its hammer, so I'm forced to engage in a 1v1 against him. I end up getting a really nice streak of crits into him, so he's forced to blow all his defensive cooldowns just to not get insta-killed. But at this point, my team's just going to win the match. He's going to keep attacking me, so I'm going to kill him off, just kind of as a final statement. And that concludes this episode of Meditation Guardian Commentary. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed.